there, welcome to Hippie Happy Homeschooler. My name is Gina, and today I'm hopping on here to share with you some books that I have loved this year. I'm an avid reader. I love challenging myself with a number of books at the same time. I've always been like that since I was a little girl. My mom used to take me to the library once a week, and I would just hoard gobs of books, and I would read through them in a week, and then she would take me back to the library the next week to accumulate more. So being a homeschooler, you can see how that addiction can easily grow with all of the different books that you're coming into contact with every day, and the desire to learn and to know and to understand and to seek wisdom. And so as a homeschool mom, not only do I read with my kids, but it's an opportunity for me to kind of give myself somewhat of an education that I don't feel like I had. So I'm part of two groups that do a book club every year. One is called Schole Sisters, which I love. If you've never heard of Schole Sisters and you are one of those people who really loves to read, really loves to learn, likes to be challenged, and wants to be pushed in a sense, this group is amazing. What I love about it is they are like-minded Christian homeschoolers. They're studying a variety of topics, classically minded. They have different mini courses that you can take if you become a member on their website. You can check them out on their podcast. They have a number of different topics that they teach on and speak on, and they have sparked something in me, this group of women. And one of the things that I'm involved in with this book club is it's called the 5x5, where you choose 5 different categories at the beginning of the year, and then you choose 5 books in each category. That has probably grown to a 10x5 for me this year, just because I'm one of those people that I'm like, ooh, squirrel, I want to read that one too, and that one, and somebody will mention a book. One of the things that they do in their podcast is at the beginning of every episode, someone will mention what they've been reading lately and give a quote. And so, of course, rabbit trails is what happens. But it has been so amazing. So that's one book club that I'm a part of. The other book club that I'm a part of is the Literary Life podcast. And again, it's another group of classically minded students of reading and learning and education. And they handed out this year, well, not handed out, you download it, a PDF of, I think there's 25 different bingo boxes of books for you to cross off and hopefully finish by the end of the year. And they're all different types of books. I mean, it could be a work by Jane Austen, a work by Charles Dickens, a historical fiction, letters by a famous author, a work by George Orwell other than 1984 Animal Farm, or just to name a few. So between those two book clubs, I have been really enjoying just being pushed outside of my comfort zone, because everyone leans towards a certain type or style of book. Two things that was kind of outside of what I would normally choose for myself was a detective novel and a science fiction novel. So it's really cool. So anyways, all that being said, I highly suggest searching out Schole Sisters. It's SCHOLE Sisters podcast on Apple iTunes or the Literary Life podcast. The other thing about the Literary Life podcast that I love is they're affiliated with something called the House of Humane Letters. And at the House of Humane Letters, they have various different mini courses, different offerings of classes. I took one on Shakespeare by Thomas Banks that was really, really well done. He's a great professor and poet, and just his, he wasn't the only one that taught it. Cindy Rollins also was a part of that, and Angelina Stanford. So that was one. There's another mini course that I cannot wait to take called, I think it's called Finding the Gospel in Fairy Tales. And that particular class just looks so fascinating to me. I have listened to a number of their podcasts surrounding finding the gospel in fairy tales. And so just listening to those podcasts alone was enough to sort of refuel my desire to make sure that I was keeping fairy tales and fables in our morning time, just for the sake of wonder, but also when you realize that you can find the gospel in some of these original fairy tales, not the newly written ones that you might see on Disney. It's just, it peels back a layer that you have not even contemplated before. So that is that. So today I'm just going to share a couple of the books that I have been reading this year. All different categories, everything from motherhood to homeschooling, history, classics. I'm just going to share a number of the ones that have stuck out to me so far. And perhaps one of them will be something that interests you, or maybe even lights a fire under you like it did for me. I have not been one of those people in my earlier primary education that read all of the classics. That was just, I had read some of them, like you do in school. But these women brought out something that I forgot how much I loved reading. And it's just been amazing. It's just been such a special journey. It feels like a gift that I've been able to give to myself. And that's special, and that's important, for moms, because we do pour out all day. We give to our children selfless love and sacrifice, and it is all beautiful and worth it. But it really is powerful to be able to do something special that will fill you as well. So let's go ahead and go through some of these books. Okay, so here we are. I have my little stack here. These are some of the books that I read this year, and I'm just going to kind of go through them quickly. I'll give like a brief description of each of them, but maybe something in this stack will strike you as something you want to go off on a little exploration of, or maybe it's something that you've read before and you want to revisit. I always feel like a good book is like an old friend. You don't just meet them once, you meet them several times. So anyways, I guess I'll start with this one. This is Modern Miss Mason by Leah Bowden. She lives in England. She's a Charlotte Mason enthusiast. And she kind of wrote this for moms living in modern times and how to adapt the Charlotte Mason method in today's world. These are not in any specific category. I'm just kind of pulling from the stack. Dante's Inferno. I had never read Dante, so let me just tell you, if you haven't read The Inferno, it is one of the most, there's a reason it's probably one of the best epic poems of all time. I can't even articulate how incredibly beautiful this work of art is. It's astounding to me. And what I love about this version, this is the Anthony Esselin version, and what I love about his is that he has the Italian on the left, and then he has the English in the right. But you see the rhyme better in Italian. Si, Insida, Anida, Affatura, Lordura, Oblia, Cria, Agiuntu, or however you say that, punto. Like, it's, to me, that alone was just such a beautiful way to go back and forth and just see the pattern and the rhythm of the poem, and then also just the poem itself is incredible. So I haven't read Purgatorio yet. I'm getting ready to get into that one next, but this was incredible. And one more thing about this. If you're interested in starting Dante, one thing you can do is read Dante, read a canto a day, and then go to 100daysofdante.com, and they have different professors from all over, I think Gonzaga University, different universities in Canada, I mean, just kind of all over. Every canto, someone different will explain and expound on the canto so that you can get more out of it. Another place to go online to learn more about Dante is Dr. Scott Mason. It's Masson. He's a Canadian professor, and he just made it come alive even more. This one is Churchill's Trial, written by Larry Arnn. He's a professor at Hillsdale College. He is a huge fan of Churchill, has spent pretty much his whole career reading his work and studying him. And so he wrote this one about him, which is, I just started it. I'm not finished with it yet. Just Rest by Sonia Corbett. It's a study of the Exodus. Just, honestly, just a beautiful book about pausing and the work that God does in us when we do that, and talks about that wilderness and how we're meant to have rest. We're meant to enter his rest. So it's just, this is a really special book. I think I said earlier that I had not really a big sci-fi person. So this was kind of like the first sci-fi novel I've ever read. And I was more apt to want to read it because it was C.S. Lewis. I love him. So this is the space trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet, Prelandria, and That Hideous Strength. Unbelievable. Such a fascinating read. So this is amazing. Next is That Hideous Strength, a deeper look at how the West was lost. It kind of plays off of the C.S. Lewis, That Hideous Strength. He explains what the hideous strength is. If you have not read it, it's okay. You will still figure it out. If you've never read the trilogy, you would still understand what he's talking about in this book. But this was excellent. I took a mini class on Schole sisters that included this book and a book by Carl Trueman that was amazing. So this was just a really, really good book. The Confessions, I have been just taking my time with this one. It's one of those books that I read in very small bite-sized pieces because it's so rich and beautiful and replete with God's truth that it's just not something you want to rush through. The Quotidian Mysteries. This is a beautiful, tiny, but powerful book for moms. Laundry, liturgy, and women's work. Such a good book. I cannot say enough about it. I've probably read it 3 times, and honestly, I'm about ready to pick it back up again. It just talks about the liturgy of what it is that we do and how, I'm oversimplifying, but how it's not something that's meant to grind us down. It's actually supposed to give us life. And again, that's just, I highly recommend. Mitten Strings for God by Katrina Kennison. Another kind of book about embracing the ordinary days and how the Lord doesn't put pressure on us, and it's just reflections for moms. So this is really special. I remember I read this at Christmas time, and it really helped me during that time because you can tend to feel really overwhelmed and pressed sometimes just by the world standards, and this was just a good reflection to read during that time. Holy Heige, this is a beautiful book about hospitality, gathering people in your home and creating an atmosphere for the gospel to grow. This is really, it's not that long, it's a special read. The Introverted Mom from Jamie C. Martin. This was really good for me to read, to learn about how to just recharge. And I mean, it goes deeper than that, but talks about the quiet joy of being an introvert. So that was a good read. The Medieval Mind of C.S. Lewis, How Great Books Shaped a Great Mind. Again, I just love C.S. Lewis. I read pretty much anything I can get my hands on of his that he's written, essays or books that other people have written about him. Prisoners of Geography, another really fantastic book surrounding geography and geopolitics. This was a really good read that I just started, so I'm not quite finished with it. A Tale of Three Kings. This story I actually read probably 10 years ago, and I picked it back up again recently because I've been reading through 2 Samuel and studying David, and so it follows, it's kind of a narrative style of telling the story of David and Absalom and Saul and the relationship of David between those two different people in his life and how he responded to the way that he was treated and how he submitted to the authority of God. It's convicting. I would say if you struggle with church hurt, this is a book for you, but it also is about how we respond to leadership and submit to people that God has placed in power. Sorry about that. So this, again, just powerful. I love his style of writing. The Abolition of Man, C.S. Lewis, amazing. I can't say enough good about him. Actually took a class on humility and doxology about the abolition of man, and it brought out the teachings in this even more. I've read through this twice now. I feel like I need to read it again because it is a complicated read. It's tiny. It's not that big of a book. I think it's like 80 pages maybe. But the first time I listened to it, I read it and I held it and listened to it through Audible, and the second time I read it through just reading the book, and it was just good. Joseph Pieper, I think is how you pronounce his name, Abusive Language, Abuse of Power. He has a number of these adorable, the topics aren't adorable, but just like the size is adorable to me. I'm such a visual person. But he wrote Only the Lover Sings. He wrote a book on work. It's a really good read. Stratford Caldecott, Beauty in the Word, Rethinking the Foundations of Education. This is great for understanding the work that we do as educators in our homes and the why behind what we're doing. Talks about goodness, truth, and beauty, and he's a fantastic writer. This is a really good read. Screwtape Letters, another Lewis fabulous book. I read this alongside my kids, my teenagers, and that was really neat to go through that with them. Angels in the Architecture, A Protestant Vision for Middle Earth. This is beautiful. This is a powerful read. And some of the chapters, just to go over them, Introduction, Positively Medieval, talks about the things that we have lost in modernity, the things that we could learn from the medieval church. It's a really good read. So that was great. Sophie's World. This is a narrative style book that takes you through all of the different philosophers. It's the history of philosophy, but written probably for the age, I would say 14, 15. is how the writer wrote this book, but I picked it up because it just looked interesting. They had mentioned it quite a bit on Schole Sisters, and so I was like, I'm going to read this, and it's been really good. If you give this to your teen, I would recommend reading it with them because it does talk about other philosophies, and some of the concepts are complicated, and I just feel like it's one of those things that you need to be with your child if they're reading it. The Iliad, of course, I've read this before, I read it in my high school years, but I revisited the Iliad and the Odyssey this year, and it was timely. God taught me some things amazingly through these two beautiful works. And so this is the Robert Fagles version. It's a good translation. For the Odyssey, I used the Samuel Butler version, and that's really great. This is actually more of like a textbook. It's the Progymnosmata. I think that's how you pronounce it. I used this in tandem with a course that I took on Schole Sisters called the Progym Writing Course, and it teaches you the art of how to write from this method, which is a method that the ancient Greeks used. I think Cicero and Paul were taught under this style of writing and rhetoric. I think that something has been lost in public education and how writing is taught in modern times, and there's just something very different about this method. And so we've been going through it. I took the course first myself because you learn and then you teach. And so this year I'm taking my kids through the Progym. My youngest daughter is just going through the first 3 lessons of it because she's only in 6th grade, but my juniors will probably work through most of it this year, and then they'll complete it their senior year in high school, but hopefully it will just make them better writers. Here's another philosophy book, A Little History Philosophy by Nigel Warburton. This is a great read. I'm probably halfway through it. Just really making sense of philosophy for those who are not super well versed in it, which I was not, particularly, it's not something that I had really done a deep dive in before until this year when I just started feeling really incredibly fascinated with the topic. So this with Sophie's World, and then this book, A History of Western Philosophy and Theology, pairing those 3 works together and listening to various professors kind of expound on it. I took a course through Hillsdale, which if you haven't checked out hillsdale.edu, it's incredible because they have all of these free online classes that you can take, everything from philosophy to the study of C.S. Lewis. You can take a class on fairy tales. You can take a class on the civil rights movement. I mean, there's so many different offerings, and each course has anywhere from 6 to 12 lectures, and it's free. And then you take quizzes. So it's very enriching. It's powerful. So I've been using Hillsdale with this, as well as Peter Kreeft. If you look him up, he does a very accessible teaching on the different philosophers. I don't want to say he dumbs it down. He's a very, very highly intelligent man. He just makes it more accessible because sometimes some of these things can be really complicated, like metaphysics, and he just makes it easier for you. And finally, just my last one that I was going to share was called Mornings in Florence by John Ruskin. I was captivated by a podcast that I had heard about this book, in which Charlotte Mason had visited this little chapel in Florence, and this book talks about visiting that little chapel. And our family is going to Europe in 3.5 weeks, and one of the places that we're going is Florence. And so I am so excited to finish this book and show up at that little chapel and just be able to experience what I read about. So that is it for now. I hope that maybe this video helped to give you some ideas of different books that you might want to trail off and read and study and explore. And maybe you'll check out Schole Sisters or the Literary Life podcast. They're enriching, they're beautiful. One of the things that I love about the Literary Life podcast is that they will go through entire books and do several podcasts about a specific book and break it down and help you understand and pull more out of it. So for instance, one of the books that I read this summer was Wuthering Heights, which was it Wuthering Heights? No, it wasn't Wuthering Heights. It was Northanger Abbey. And then, what's the other one with Fanny Price? Jane Austen. I can't remember now. My mind has gone blank, but you know, if you know Jane Austen, you know Fanny Price. But anyways, they did a whole series on those, and it was so powerful and beautiful, and I learned so much. It's so humbling. I think it was J.R. Tolkien that said education is repentance. And it is. Like, every time I learn something new, I'm just profoundly humbled. And, you don't know what you don't know. And the more you learn, the more you realize you know nothing. So it's powerful. It's such a special thing to be able to do. So I count myself blessed. But anyways, that's that for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up or hit the subscribe button if you enjoy the content that I share here. God bless.